things mean go. I will make sure that we're live everywhere else too here. So let's just double check. It's been a little while since we've done a live show. My co-host and I were doing. Yep, we're live on Facebook
I see
already.
you.
Else too here.
I
So
see you. I'm going
let's
to
just double
share
check.
this right
It's
now.
been a little while since we've done a live show. My co-host and I were doing. Is that me that's making noise, or is that you?
Yeah.
On Facebook
I
already.
see you.
I got.
Okay, let me mute that so we're not doing double here.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's good that everything still works. Like I said, it's been a few I think 2 months since my last live stream for OTC. So welcome back, everybody. Thanks for coming back. Uh, I'm psyched to have our guest on today. He's a gentleman that up until this moment I've never had a conversation with, but we seem to keep crossing paths professionally the last couple of years. So I figured he's got a new movie that's done its premiere and is doing some film festivals now. There's no better time than now, probably, to introduce you guys to Joe Badon, right? Did I say that right?
Badon. It doesn't matter though. Or
no,
Biden.
It absolutely matters. It's your name. My wife used to yell at me for saying Kamala Harris's name wrong because I would say Kamala, and she's like, "No, you can't do that. That's her name."
So, for me, I don't care. Badon, Badon, it doesn't matter.
Well, I'm psyched to have Joe on the show. Joe is director, writer, producer. You're independent filmmaker, jack of all trades, wear all the hats. Yeah. So it's I'm psyched. Welcome to OTC, Joe.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I feel like we did that thing where we sort of crossed paths but never met a few years ago. And it's just kind of one of those things where, your stuff will keep coming up in my feeds and stuff on social media, and I'm like, I gotta reach out to this guy, and you were like, yeah, man, let's do it. So Joe, those of you guys that don't know Joe's work, your stuff is kind of like it's a horror, but it's out there, which obviously will speak to our listeners very much. So you're best known for the feature "The God Inside My Ear,"
right?
Which has been out now for a couple of years. It's available to stream on Amazon Prime and a bunch of places. Right. So why don't you tell everyone kind of a little bit about you, kind of where you're from, how you got your start?
Sure. From Slidell, Louisiana. It's right outside New Orleans. By profession, I'm an illustrator. Comic books and storyboards for movies, and art prints. That's what I've been doing the last few years, is selling art prints to drunk tourists on the streets of New Orleans. So I've been doing that for about 6 years, and before that, I was actually a pastor at a non-denominational Holy Roller Church. I did that for about 12 years, and got out of the church and became an artist. And I was always an artist, like always an illustrator, but I just decided to pursue it full time. And then around 39, I just kind of had that midlife crisis thing, like I'm going to do something, that I've been wanting to do, and I've always wanted to make a film, always been a big cinephile. So I wrote and directed. I basically took our savings and made The God Inside My Ear, and that was my first film. That was 2017. I wrote it and shot it in 2018. It was basically out there. And then during the festival run of God Inside My Ear, I wrote Sister Tempest, and we shot it 2019. And this is where we're at now. We're just finishing up our festival run, and we're about to do a virtual cinema run through Eventive.
Oh, wow.
And then we're going to go, and then we got picked up by Dark Side Releasing for Blu-ray and DVD and streaming. That's going to be in June is when Excellent. That actually comes out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's always amazing to hear these great stories of people that have been able to keep their work going through the pandemic and even excel, which is amazing. I want to know how a guy with a pastor background ended up making like these psychedelic horror movies.
Yeah, it was weird. I've always been like kind of a fringy weirdo kind of person. And then like college, you kind of go, I know most people go on some sort of quest in that time period, so I kind of went on a spiritual quest and found myself in charismatic kind of weirdo churches. Um, and so I was really drawn to it just for the spiritual, you're just on a spiritual journey. It's kind of like, kind of what you do at that time. So I kind of went, me and my wife went really, you know, neck deep into church. And, after we were in church for about 16 years, and probably after about 12 or 13 years, we kind of sat back and looked and was like, this is none of the things that we want to be, you know, kind of realized we kind of felt like we went in the wrong direction. And so, we kind of worked our way out of church, and kind of felt like I had a couple years where I kind of deprogrammed from all those backwards belief systems. I still believe in God and I still have a spiritual life, but it's definitely different than it was.
It's more on your own
Yeah.
terms.
Oh, completely.
I feel that.
Totally. It's definitely much more of a hippie kind of mentality than it was before. Um, so it's kind of weird. I kind of regret some of those, life decisions. I think everybody does, but then at the same time, kind of makes you who you are. So, and then the movies that I've done are kind of that cathartic, me trying to figure out like life, and almost like using it as therapy. So that's why there's a lot of spiritual questions in my movies. There's a lot of like dealing with meaning of life and bigger picture things, because of that,
Right.
so,
Knowing that history about you now, thinking about the God Inside My Ear, like things make more sense.
yeah,
Like,
I think so.
Because that film is very much in that kind of psychedelic spiritual realm. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not it's not your normal run of the mill slasher movie or your normal run of
Right.
the mill like hidden killer or even like ghost story. Um,
Yeah.
so like
One of my favorite
I was gonna say
films
where did that
is,
story come from? Like,
yeah, that was, I've been telling a lot of people it's basically like an updated version of Carnival of Souls. Um, it's kind of follows almost the same beats. So that was a lot of it. Was I use Carnival of Souls as kind of an inspiration. We even show Carnival of Souls in the film as kind of a way to just be like, look, this is where we're getting our ideas from.
right,
I think it's funny when directors and creators like kind of pretend like they don't have any influences, you
right.
know, like they create in a vacuum, which is stupid. Like we all get our ideas from somewhere. So was always in love with apartment horror, like Tenet or Repulsion, Rosemary's Baby, and Carnival of Souls is right in there. So it's kind of my version of apartment horror, um, kind of idea. So it's that psychological thriller sort of thing.
Yeah, it's got a uniquely European feel to it too when I was watching it because I'm a big fan of Italian cinema
Nice.
and like the giallo is like that's my jam. So, but
Yeah.
it's got that feel to it, and I remember even like you definitely lean into that. Like the poster art leans into that.
Yeah.
The way it's shot, the overall kind of like the tension that's kind of building throughout it, and like you get thrown for a loop in it too. So it's like, uh,
Yeah.
as a kid, were you into kind of like more of that fringe cinema? Because I mean, I feel like we all kind of start with like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's kind of where you go from there.
It's funny when I was a young kid, I hated horror. I was so scared of it. I remember trying to watch Poltergeist as like at like 10 and like pee in my pants, And I finally I was really into sci-fi like growing up, And it was probably 16 I watched Evil Dead 2, and that really struck a chord with me. I think because there was a lot of comedy in it made it more palatable, the horror more palatable. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole of like horror comedy sort of stuff, like Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, and you know Evil Dead 1, 2, and Army of Darkness. And I was a real big fan of Sam Raimi, growing up. And then uh, everything kind of switched around 20 when I like gave my life to Jesus. And then that was like I got rid of everything.
Right.
Got rid of all my music, all my comics, all my movies. And, I was watching like Veggie Tales for like 10 years, and like all those shitty Christian films out there. And so I, like, in high school and the beginning of college, I totally got into fringe cinema, got into Jodorowsky and Holy Mountain and all that sort of stuff. And then, getting saved, I felt like all that was evil and got rid of all of it. And then it was probably 6 or 7 years ago when I or no, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago at this point, somewhere around there, right? We were finally totally out of church, and I started watching more uh, films again, and fell back in love with the real fringe stuff, um, and really going down the rabbit hole and trying to find the weirdest shit I can find. Peter Greenaway and Jodorowsky and David Lynch, and just I was a big fan of David Lynch growing up, and so I kind of rediscovered my love for him, and then finding like the really avant-garde underground stuff like Mickey Reese and Miguel Lanzo and
Wow, yeah.
stuff like Jesus Shows You the Way, the Highway, and there's one movie that I'm just in love with right now, Samurai Ronnie,
Oh,
which
wow.
is like I think it's what is it, Swedish samurai movie or something strange. It's just trying to find those really weird things that really push the envelope of what cinema is. I'm really obsessed with that because I like weird stuff of all kinds. When I was in high school and college, I was really into music. I was really trying to start a music career, and I was really into like Mr. Bungle and John Zorn, Naked City, and Japanese noise music, and all this kind of like weird experimental stuff. Really got into John Cage from like the early 20th century. And John Cage was famous for this one piece called, I think it's called 333 or 344. It was basically a whole piece of silence. Like literally, you can go watch it on YouTube, just piano players just sitting there, just turning pages and never playing the music. And I'm obsessed with that kind of absurdity.
Right.
So I try to inject that into my films as much as possible.
I love how like we'll always continue to revisit what's inspired us to make it our own. Like you use that example of the silent music piece, like and then like a hip hop group like Clipping, the last song on their record is just 15 minutes of a piano on fire. Like,
yeah,
and that's a song.
yeah.
Like, and it's like the same thing with filmmaking, whereas you'll watch Carnival of Souls and you'll be inspired to reinvent that type of story into something completely like fresh too. Like I could definitely not, like, once you said the comparisons, like I can see them when you said, but I wasn't watching it being like, oh, this is a ripoff of Carnival of Souls.
Right.
Because it's
right.
it's more than just a fresh coat of paint,
Right.
So I can absolutely appreciate it with everything too, with like, oh, deciding to become a filmmaker, in your late 30s, because I did the same exact thing. So like I worked on receiving docs, and then I'm like, I want to make a documentary. So I kind of want to visit that a little bit with you. So at what point were you like, I want to make this movie? Like what, and then actually going and making it?
Yeah. Well, for God Inside My Ear, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Let's see. It was pretty quickly. Like it was the beginning of like 2017. I was like, I really feel like I want to make a film, and so I just took me a couple months to write, and then we shot it in 2018. So it was probably 6 months after I wrote it, we were already in pre-production.
Now, did you have connections working like as an illustrator with like like people to use for crew?
A little. Like I had always been working with doing storyboards and always trying to make connections locally, and I also worked at art markets in New Orleans, and so you're working with other artists and other multi-talented people. And if you go to an art market and you talk to the artists, most of them have gone to film school. A lot of them were like usually wanted to be filmmakers that that decided maybe got disenfranchised and started doing something different, or film as far as like Hollywood stuff, it'll eat you up and spit you out. It's terrible. So a lot of these guys would get burnt out, but they still love film and stuff. So what I did was, um, I decided I'm going to make film, and I just posted on Facebook and just said, "Hey guys, I'm making a film. Anybody want to help out?" Basically, and that's how I met up with my cinematographer, who's worked on both films, and he's the one that really had all the connections for the crew side. And as far as my acting, my actors, a lot of it was Facebook friends or artist friends from art markets. And just asking around, saying, "Did anybody want to help out?" Basically that's how it went. So.
And that's great. I mean, working outside of the Hollywood system, you're able to do that. Like, you don't have to deal
Yeah.
with, SAG or like any of that stuff, where it's just like people with the passion that want to do
Yeah.
it. And
Yep.
because well, I'm sure we'll get to it. We're not making a lot of money in independent film right now. It's about
No.
it's about loving it, which is
There's like no money in independent film. There's a great Facebook page for filmmakers called Protect Yourself from Predatory Distributors, and you get on that, and it is just one story after another of getting fucked over by the industry, like everybody is.
oh yeah,
Like,
oh yeah.
I made no money on God Inside My Ear, and I don't think I'll make any money off of Sister Tempest either. So.
Right, yeah. It's a shame because, like, looking, and we're maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but like looking at, like, I know my movie's been up on Amazon Prime now for what, I don't know, since February of last year, so just about a year. And like, I get a check from it every month, but it's not
Yeah.
very much money. And we did it ourselves. We didn't go through a distributor. I know you were able to work with a distributor, which, it's got its pluses and minuses, which we could get into if we wanted to. But
Sure.
like, I know myself, like, I worked Amazon myself, and then I worked with a distributor for a bunch of other stuff. And like, it's still just like looking at the numbers, and you're like, okay, like, 25,000 people or whatever watched it in this 12-week period. And this is what comes out of that. And it's just none of it makes any sense. No one has any answers. So it's all about the passion to be like, well, why are you going to make it? Like, in our doc, Adam Green says this, where he's talking about the money side of things, where it's like, well, you told me it didn't make any money. Why do you want to make another one? And then like, well, people love it, so you want to work hard at it. It's the type of thing where it's about the passion. And yeah, I mean, financially, like, you have to try to take care of things the way that you can, but as long as you have that passion, you're still going to come out with product you're proud of, right?
Well, yeah, and I think two things for me is, I don't know what it is about getting older, but the older I get, I mean, I know what it is, but the older I get, the more I just think about, when I'm on my deathbed, what am I going to be proud of? Am I going to be proud of, like, just working my ass off and probably not even making a lot of money, but just enough to, like,
Right.
take care of things? Or am I going to be proud of, like, creating something? And that's what I feel is the spiritual side of things, is that whole idea of creating things is because I feel like we all have that divine nature to want to create something else. Just like the divine created all of this, we want to create our own worlds, because we're just residue of this divinity. And so that's, for me, that's what drives me forward, is to create a world. you know it sounds weird, but
No, it's no, you're
and
no,
then
you're, I hear you. I feel it.
yeah, and then also, like, on the practical side of things, uh making these kind of movies is what brings you to the next level to get bigger funding.
Right.
You're not going to make any money off these films, but investors and Hollywood want to see what you can do with nothing.
Right.
you know so.
Yeah, every little bit helps, which kind of brings me to the next point of, like, so God Inside My Ear got into a ton of film festivals. You got to play it kind of all over the world. I mean, it was in places, it
Yeah.
was everywhere. So you go through that process, and it's time to make Sister Tempest. So
Right.
did you attack it differently, or is it an idea you already had kind of floating around? Give me kind of the genesis of the second film.
Um, I knew for sure that I needed a bigger budget. It's funny was with Sister Tempest, I wrote it like as like $1 million movie because I was like, all right, because I was writing Sister Tempest during the festival run of the God Inside My Ear, and I was like, this movie's gonna do great. We're gonna get good distribution, and uh, and then we'll be able to use this. We'll be able to use God Inside My Ear as a resume piece for more money. So I wrote Sister Tempest with like a big budget in mind, like a real movie budget. I didn't think about locations or about wardrobe or anything. I just thought whatever shits out of my brain, I'm gonna write it down. And so I kind of went out in that direction. And then after we did it, after I wrote it, I should say, after I wrote it, I wrote a pitch package. I did a lookbook. I did all this stuff to sell it to an investor. And then I started shopping it around. And I couldn't really get anybody to take me seriously at all.
Right.
So I went, okay. After about 5 or 6 months of shopping it, I went, let's try something else. And so then I scaled the budget down to 25,000, and I talked to my DP and my editor, and I said, "Listen, I'm thinking about launching a Kickstarter for 25 grand. Will you be on board for this?" And they were on board for it. So they knew that it was going to be another no budget sort of situation because 25 grand in the movie was like 10 times more movie than God Inside My Ear. So I was, we were really stretching the pennies for this new one.
Right.
And they were on board. So we did a Kickstarter and raised the money. And we ended up having an Indiegogo afterwards for a little bit of the post production. But it was pretty much by the end of production, like the last day, I had run out of my last dollars. I was like, I'm done, So I think I paid for the after party out of my own pocket,
right.
And stuff. But yeah, it was it was a very tight budgeted film, and that was the genesis of it.
Absolutely. So in the chat room, Walker has a question. He's asking, when you see a film with a budget like 125 to 150 million dollars, that's an absolute piece of dog squeeze, like a film Cats, for example. On a scale of 1 to 10, how angry do you get?
Oh, I can't even watch those movies because I just want to pee on the TV. I'm just like so mad at that of what well, and also having worked on sets before, because there was a lot of movies being shot in New Orleans. There still is, but for a while there was a lot of movies, and I would do extra work sometimes, or also do storyboards, and I would just go on set after once they started shooting because they would let me because I did the storyboards or whatever. And the amount of waste that any movie, even a good movie, uh, it's unbelievable. Like the amount of food that they throw away every day. It really pisses me off, all these Hollywood types that are always so mad because of like harming the environment, because Hollywood destroys the environment every day of shooting. They have these giant fucking rigs set up they run their generators all day, all night.
Yep.
And it's just wasting gasoline. It's just insane how much they spend. And then the actors have their own trailers that they wasting gasoline just to run, and they just sit in their trailers all day until they're ready to yell action, and they go walk out lazily, do their lines, and go sit and sleep in their trailers again. It's unbelievable. I hate Hollywood. I think that's why I've been, over the last few years since I shot my first one, I've been trying to watch more and more independent cinema. And I've been enjoying it more. There's way more fresh ideas, interesting ideas. I just saw a movie called Ham on Rye a few days ago, and I've been telling everybody about it. I'm like, this movie's blowing my mind, and it's totally outside the system, all with no name actors, and it's like one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, And so that's what's great about digging around through that independent market is you find all these gems that no one's ever heard of. And you're like, these are like the movies of the future, you know?
Right.
And you get all these wonderful ideas that you can add to your repertoire as well from them. So anyway.
No, I hear you. Which now this brings me kind of to the more general conversation that I definitely wanted to have. Looking at the way things are changing in terms of streaming, and like, I'm kind of worried about the future for independent cinema right now, because we're in this kind of weird spot where anyone that wants to make a movie can make a movie.
Yeah.
You know, cameras are affordable. You can make a legit, 4K feature on your iPhone if you want to. Yeah. But now we're seeing this kind of shift, and we noticed, and this is actually why the timing kind of worked out so well. Is I saw that post on that Facebook group, the Predatory Film Distributor group, about how now Amazon is started. They're no longer taking any nonfiction films through their video direct, and they're not taking any shorts.
Yeah.
So I just uploaded a nonfiction short to them, like. I think we released it in December. It went up, and I'm a documentary filmmaker, so my other feature is a documentary that's on there. So I'm obviously checking every day to make sure everything is still where it's supposed to be. But so something like that was great for guys, like myself, where I could put the stuff on there. It gets, a little bit of legs, and it does well, and my stuff is done well on there. But where are we going to go? Whereas we're at that point now where, remember when Netflix used to have cult movies and horror movies and weird cinema coming out of everything. And then they started to curate that stuff. And now you're not even going to get a film on Netflix unless you're already in the system. So where do you think, where are we going to go in a couple years? For guys like us that are working outside of the system, and how do we get our product to people?
God, that is a good. I have a hopeless answer and a hopeful answer. I think the hopeless answer is that things are becoming more and more streamlined on the internet, and so every streaming company use old exploitation movies and amazing B movies, and also low budget indie films. They use that as their backbone for a certain time until they get a decent enough subscription, membership, and then they start doing their own original stuff, and then they drop all that. And so what ends up happening is all the people that subscribe to those channels, that they subscribe because of the exploitation and the B movies and the fringe movies and the indie films, they end up leaving, and they end up going to the next thing that does it. So there's always a new streaming platform that basically doesn't have enough money to do original stuff, or to pick up Marvel movies and shit. So they end up picking up all the fringe stuff, right? And so that new streaming service. So that's my hope, is that there will be that new streaming service that pops up, right? One is Tubi. Tubi is been really rising.
Yeah.
And they use a lot of fringe, a lot of B movies, a lot of indie films. But they will get to the point where they're popular enough that they start doing original content in big blockbusters, and they'll shit everybody out.
Yep.
That's below that. And then another one will pop up. So it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole, where it's kind of like MySpace, Friendster to MySpace to Facebook, kind of a deal.
Right.
The problem is that Facebook is getting more longevity than Friendster or MySpace did, and Amazon is finally locked in, and Netflix is locked in. So they're kind of pushing out any of the smaller markets, right? So the hopeful answer is that there'll just be another streaming service that pops up. We all get to rotate to that streaming service. The hopeless answer is that these bigger companies are getting bigger and just pushing it all out until it's all non-existent,
right?
Almost all non-existent on the internet. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully the future will be another streaming service that pops up
Right.
that really does well that we can all go to. But I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing is there is no answer because what we think may or may not happen. Everything could change.
Yeah.
Even look at something like people that are super successful through using YouTube. You have to get 10,000 subscribers to
Yeah.
even be able to monetize your content on there.
Yeah.
So like, if you luck out and are able to get there and build a following, then and then they'll change it again.
Here's another like prophecy I have, right? Is that all the big theatrical companies like AMC and all that shit, of course we already know that they're kind of pretty much completely go away. But what I see is a rise of a lot more independent chains, and those guys are not going to be able to afford the big movies. So I hope that we might see a big rise in like independent cinema at the theater.
Right.
That's what I'm hoping, almost like a Roger Corman drive-in sort of renaissance. So we'll see, but hopefully that happens.
I mean, if you take a look at like Alamo Drafthouse, that's kind of how they started. But then they became a big company, and you run into the same thing. I know myself when we had a run in a theater in LA, which I won't name, and like no one came.
Yeah.
And we were paired with another like independent documentary, and I think they were like, yeah, we love the film, but just nobody knows it. Like nobody knows to get there.
No, and also like even marketing doesn't really do a lot. What really does a lot is if someone with a big social media presence, like a celebrity or a fucking Instagram influencer or something.
Well, now it's the TikTok influencer.
Right, or TikTok. Somebody that has a huge following likes your stuff and shares it.
Yeah.
That's really the key. That's it. But paying for ads is almost like
meaningless.
I don't think it does much, So
I think sometimes like Facebook and Instagram ads will help with getting some information to your followers that maybe miss it. But I don't think it's really difficult.
To your own followers though.
Yeah, exactly. But, people that should already be knowing about it, but because Instagram and Facebook, I mean there's Instagram's owned by Facebook, but
right, but like, all that algorithm shit.
Yeah, it's all buried, and like and then if you make the mistake of buying an Instagram ad once, if you ever want your stuff to be seen again, you're going to have to buy an Instagram ad every single time you want people to see it because they know you're willing to spend the money. So they're going to bury your shit until you pony up the money. I know it happened to me. We did an Indiegogo for the documentary we're working on now. And the difference, actually, no, here's a good example of what you were saying. Us doing it ourselves, we weren't really getting anywhere, but we're friends with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the band The Story So Far, but a couple of the dudes from Story So Far in the documentary we're working on, they posted about it once on Twitter and shit lit up.
Yeah.
But us working on our own, even paying to do ads, you don't get anywhere.
Right. Or if you get like a bigger website that like, finds out about you and does a feature article or does an interview, like a real big website. That's another option, but it's like getting those people to see your stuff and actually share it is almost accidental.
Right.
So. Yeah.
It's like, and the thing too, is it's like, you can like force feed it to people and they still won't take it. No,
because I'm realizing this, people want discovery. They don't want to be sold. They don't want something like pushed in their face. They want to find something for themselves,
right,
and feel like they found it for themselves. Yeah. And so I think that's a big part of it, is feeling like, ooh, this is something maybe no one knows about, or, my favorite, I don't know, influencer loves this, and I'm a big fan of them because I discovered them and they're giving this to me, but an ad, like you said, if it's just really good for your own followers,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. All right, let's backtrack here a little bit. So, Sister Tempest, were you guys done filming prior to the pandemic hitting, or did you work on it during the pandemic?
No, we were done filming. We did all post production during the pandemic,
Okay.
so that was luckily.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'm wrong. We done filming in 2020 or 2019, and we finished post production, and we're about to do our cast and crew screening. The day before we were going to do our cast and crew screening, New Orleans went to phase 0 or phase 1 or whatever. Like, so it was already starting to, like, we're already hearing about COVID and talking about it, but then they finally locked everything down.
Right.
So we ended up having to do a virtual screening of the cast and crew screening. So we had gotten actually done with pretty much everything right before COVID hit. So
yeah, I feel like I was on my way to do an interview for the documentary we're working on when they canceled the show that we were going to do the interview at, and then the next morning my kid's school was shut down, and that was it. And everything since then.
And I was like, oh, it's going to be 4 weeks, maybe a month or two. And It's like, here we are, like a year later.
I know,
like,
year plus. Because we can't work on a documentary. We have to travel to the people we need to talk to. So we can't go. We did an Indiegogo and we raised a bunch of money that we were shooting for. And we've kind of bled through all of it just because, you have to get your license, your business license renewed, and then you have to, do your taxes, like all that stuff. So it's like the last year has just been such it's just a frustrating series of events professionally. So I'm psyched to hear that you guys were able to get done beforehand, which is like, I don't even know, like, I know people that are trying to work now, and unless you're in like a big studio system and have like the stuff I know myself, like I wouldn't feel good about asking, my cameraman and my DP to get on a plane with me right now to go somewhere. Like we decided we're not doing anything else until we're all vaccinated. But kind of where do you stand on trying to work kind of during the pandemic?
We are going to start shooting maybe in like a month, and hopefully a lot of us will be vaccinated. I just, at this point, we're shooting a short film, and just try to keep everybody masked up, everybody washed hands. Like we'll have a sanitization station, and everybody stay apart as much as possible, and try to be as safe as possible. Temperature checks and all that sort of thing. If anybody feels at all sick, then we cancel, or we do it, or we change up, crew or whatever, But that's kind of the way I look at it, is trying to be as just careful as possible,
That's all you can. I mean, that's what else can you do?
Right. Exactly. Like like I said, I sell art at art markets. And after, unemployment ran out, it was kind of like, I got to go sell again, and there was just no, like, we had to get back into the world, unfortunately. And so that was kind of some adjustment. But yeah, so I kind of fall in the middle of things. I totally believe in it. I don't believe it like some people believe it's a hoax or something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But for me, I feel like if we all are just safe and, take precautions, we have to keep living our lives, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree with you. I'm right there. I mean, and we've done some things like we're shooting a short film in a couple weeks too. But like, I actually was able to do some corporate work where providing streaming for, I did a big streaming event for one of the local hospitals, and like, you find ways to make things happen. But I agree with you in terms of like, we kind of have to figure it out at this point. Like I'm super like cautious about everything, and like I'm very much like, oh yeah, I know what's going on and I believe all of it. But at the same time, like you got to kind of, I feel like, weigh those options in terms of like what that new normal is, what you should be willing to like take chances, like staying local and like, keeping small crews. That stuff I feel like is very manageable now. But getting on a plane and flying to
Yeah. Yeah.
LA, like, we're supposed to do 4 stops in California. Like, I'm like, that's just not feasible. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then my production company is so small that, like, God forbid somebody gets sick, I can't carry the type of insurance
I know.
that would be needed
Yeah.
for something like that right now. So it's the
Yeah.
type of thing where it's like, I don't want to push things back. The documentary we've been working on it for 2 years. It should have been done and out by now. And we're looking at now probably not for another year before we have a cut done.
Yeah.
So it's the type of thing where it's like, well, we've waited this long. What's, if we're going to be safe, what's 6 more months?
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, I think for me it's like, maybe it's just me being old, but um I don't believe in extremes of anything anymore. I feel like the truth is in the middle of everything. So anybody that is an extreme, like maybe they still haven't left their house, or people that are like, I'm not wearing a mask and I'm doing whatever I want. Like both of those for me are wrong. But I mean, honestly, we're not even going to really realize what any of this truth is for probably a couple decades.
Most likely.
So, hindsight is the only way to know what really the truth is about anything. So all we can do is take precautions and, do what we need to do.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about some more, some happy stuff as opposed to doom and gloom. So I always, whenever we get a filmmaker on the show, I always kind of like to talk about what their favorite stuff is. So I know you had mentioned Evil Dead early on, but what is some of that stuff that you kind of always will go back to? Like, what's your go-to Saturday night feature?
Yeah, nice. True Stories by David Byrne is one of my favorite movies ever, and I try to make anybody watch it that'll sit down, and watch. That movie just has like a million rewatchable moments in it. Um, The Holy Mountain by Jodorowsky,
One of my favorites.
it just unbelievable film. Um, that's a movie that you can watch a million times and always find something new.
Right. Now, are you a fan of like all his stuff? Do you like El Topo and Santa Sangre also, or is like, because I know some people like really like the Holy Mountain, but don't really get into the rest of it.
So I've seen El Topo, I've seen Holy Mountain, Santa Sangre, Endless Poetry, and I think that's all I've seen by him so far. And of course, that documentary they did about his failed Dune attempt.
Yes,
Um,
my buddy Steve was actually one of the producers on that, and
oh, nice!
they've been
I
working
love.
on that forever. Like, he'd been talking about making that documentary like 15 years ago about,
Oh,
and
nice.
he was just so fascinated by it. He's in our documentary too, but like, so that's like that documentary is a really good example of like people that really love film. So
Yes.
if there's is there if either a film that you could remake, choose to remake, or something that you could choose to do like a really in-depth documentary on, is there a particular one that you're always kind of like, oh man, I'd love to do something with that?
Um, yeah. A lot of people have asked me about that, uh, and I think maybe Krull. Uh,
Okay, all right.
yeah. If I had to do remake a movie, Krull, that movie has so much potential. I love the original. I honestly like totally cried in the middle of that movie with the spider scene,
Yep.
you know. Um, it's just such a beautiful scene in that film. But you don't see a lot of movies that blend the sci-fi and the fantasy like that does so well. And it reminds me of just like a freaking 70s sci-fi fantasy book. And I haven't seen a lot of movies that do it that well.
Right.
So I would love to, if I could pick one movie to remake, probably Krull. That would be
That's a cool
fantastic.
one, man.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny, in the chat room, Walker just brought up Excalibur, and I feel like
Oh,
Excalibur kind of in a weird sort of way fits into that too. Like, I think of Krull, Excalibur, and Legend
yes.
all
Yes.
together. They're all different in their own way, but I feel like they all have these very similar, like, just there's like a feel, like almost like a perversity in those movies that a lot of
Yes.
other films don't have. And I can't explain where it comes from.
Oh, completely. Actually, Excalibur is one of my favorite films, and um, I wrote an outline for like the story of Percival because I would love to do that. Just follow Percival in a more in-depth way. just because of that movie. But that director, John Borman, is one of my favorite directors. And I had watched some of his films before, but then like last year, I kind of went through a lot of his catalog and I watched Deliverance and Exorcist 2 and Zardoz and Excalibur and just kind of watched all of them together and Point Blank. And every one of his films are completely different.
Yeah.
But there's just like this art housiness to it and this visceral quality to it and this completely like no fucks given kind of quality to
Yep.
his movies that are unbelievable, especially for the times they were made.
Absolutely. It's funny you bring up Exorcist 2 because like that movie is so weird. And like we
Yes.
reviewed it on the show a couple of years ago. We actually did the whole Exorcist the whole series. And thinking about how 2 fits into it and how it doesn't fit into it really in like
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. But like, I mean, that movie got lambasted when it was released because there's first of all, there's really you can't follow up The Exorcist. There's really no way to follow it up.
Right.
So, but it's just so bizarre. And Linda Blair, who I love Linda Blair, but like I don't know what she's doing in that movie.
No, she's terrible in the film. Most of the actors are they're good actors, but really bad in that film for some reason.
Because it's like I can't imagine reading that script. Like you get that script, and you're like, "What is this?"
Yes, I would love to see. There's a director's cut out there supposedly that I would love to watch. It's supposed to be like 3 hours long or something.
Oh God.
But I absolutely love that film. But I feel like the last 20 minutes kind of falls apart on it, which I feel like if they had landed the landing on that film at the end, like literally like landed it and made it a good ending, it would be one of my favorite films ever. It's still like maybe in my top 50 just because of the sheer audacity
Yeah.
that it has. Like he mixed fantasy and science fiction and like just voodoo magic and it's just everything just all thrown in a pot. And those kind of movies I love. Like that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So watching his movies, I'm like, well, I'm trying to do that basically. If I would have made an Exorcist movie, it probably would have been similar to Exorcist 2, and everyone would have hated it. But that's cool, whatever. Um, but and Exorcist 3 is like one of my favorite movies ever. That movie.
That's like I feel like that's the film that they wanted to follow it up with. It just took them like 30 years or whatever to make it. And then the next 2 that were made, like part 5 actually was made before part 4, and they're essentially both the same movie. So it's like,
yeah, I haven't seen 4 or 5. So.
Yeah, the Dominion was. It was Dominion, and then what was the other one?
God, I don't even know.
They were both prequels,
right?
And neither of them made a lick of sense. But like, I just remember the 5th. We watched them in order, but the 5th one was actually made prior to the 4th one and released after it.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's the end of that series. I find it really interesting to kind of look at those series that just keep going.
Yeah.
A good example of that on our show, we have our buddy Joe does a segment called Bill Made Me Watch, and we'll choose different films that I make him watch. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But I tasked him to watch the Witchcraft series. You remember the Witchcraft series?
Yeah.
I had no idea when I told him, but there's 16 of those movies.
Oh shit.
And the last one was made in 2016.
Oh my God.
And but he's bad. He got that point where he's like, the main character is died and come back so many times. I think he said there was 13 different actors that played the main character, and like his backstory would change, and it's like, who's the guy that's writing Witchcraft 12 and being like, maybe the main character should be a ghost in this one? Like,
yeah, that's really super dumb. I would feel so bad if like I got tapped to do, number 17 of a film series. But at the same time, I would say this, that I could do whatever the hell I wanted by that point. They'd probably just like, look, we're just making a movie. Here's the money. Do whatever you want. which would probably be fun.
The only thing that's required is it has the witchcraft title.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Like so many of those series that just like Hellraiser's another one that just kept going. And then you
Yeah.
find the history and like out after Hellraiser, I think it's after Hellraiser 4, none of the ones that came after it between 4 and 9 were written as Hellraiser movies. They were all scripts that were repurposed from another like Dimension owned whatever script. They're like, okay, we'll throw some Cenobites at the end of it, and now it's a Hellraiser movie.
Yeah, so I remember growing up, I had watched the Hellraiser in space one, whatever number,
Hellseeker maybe.
and it was just so unbelievably bad that I didn't watch any Hellraiser movies until like 2 years ago. Joe Bob Briggs did Hellraiser 1, and we watched it, and I was like, shit, this is a good film. And so we watched 1 and 2, and that's all I've watched since.
Yeah, that's really
which are both entertaining for sure.
Yeah, I'd had a back surgery a number of years ago, and I decided to watch that whole series. And
yeah,
it was a combination of like, the next one can't be as bad as the one that I just watched. And then you'd watch it and you'd be like, well, okay, but there's no way that the next one, they did this one that was, it was like an internet, like Pinhead was like a virus on the internet. I think that was Hell World. And like he created this website and like brought all these people to this house, and then there was like a reality show, and like oh man.
Jeez, no. That might be entertaining actually. Sounds so damn bad.
I think looking back, I can find the enjoyment in it, but I remember sitting there watching it, just wanting to stab my eyes out.
I'm sure. Yes.
So,
God.
Anyway, so do you have a favorite director, or do you have like a director that's like your go-to guy?
David Lynch is amazing. Jodorowsky's incredible. I've been watching a lot of Mickey Reese, who's where's he from? Oklahoma. I'm sorry. From Oklahoma. He's made like 28 films in the last like 14 years, I think 15 years. Most of them features, and most of them he never put out, but he finally, Alamo Drafthouse put out like 5 of his films on their website, and then he just put out a new movie called Climate of the Hunter, and I've been really digging his stuff. It's totally outside of the cinema, right? It's totally outside of the Hollywood, doing it on his own terms with friends and family, and they're just some of the most interesting films I've ever seen. And Miguel Lanso, I think is how you say his last name. He did Jesus Shows You the Way of the Highway and a movie called Crumbs. Been really digging his style and his approach to things. It's a really like throw everything in a blender kind of approach. So I've been watching a lot of those kind of independent guys, and just really soaking up everything they're doing, because I feel like that they're the next generation of like the bigger filmmakers.
Right.
Also like Wes Anderson, love Wes Anderson. Jonathan Glazer? He did he did Under the Skin and Sexy Beast, and his stuff is great. So yeah, I mean, and I could give you a stupidly long list.
For sure. I'll be right there with you.
There's another director I've been watching a lot of lately, John Paez. I think that's how you say his last name. He did a movie in like, I think 85 called The Big Crime Wave. Not to be confused with Sam Raimi's
Crime Wave.
He did a movie called Big Crime Wave, and he's done a bunch of shorts, and he did a bunch of segments for like Kids in the Hall and Maniac Mansion, the series, and a few different TV shows. But his stuff's great because it's got a real kitschy kind of mid-century modern vibe, but it's also very art housey and weird. And I love that kind of those two elements put together. So if you get a chance to check out John Paez, his stuff is...
Yeah, I know the name. I'm not familiar with a lot of his stuff, though, so I definitely want to dig into that. You brought up Lynch, and I get a Lynchian feel from your stuff. Do you have a favorite Lynch flick?
Wild at Heart is probably my favorite, because it's one of the only ones that he injects a lot of humor into. And I feel like humor is like one of Lynch's strong points that you see a lot in like Twin Peaks. You don't see a lot in his features. Um, but he does in Wild at Heart. I think he may have shot that during shooting Twin Peaks, and so there's a lot of like Twin Peaksiness to
Yeah, it's got
Wild at
that
Heart.
feel for sure.
That yeah, that I don't. Not even Blue Velvet, although a lot of people like take Blue Velvet and say this is kind of a precursor to Twin Peaks, but I feel like Wild at Heart is more of a Twin Peaks feel. Um, so yeah, Twin Peaks, the Wild at Heart's my favorite of what he's done.
It's funny because Dune is actually, I'm not gonna say Dune's my favorite Lynch flick because that's kind of
Oh,
like,
I love Dune.
but Dune is a movie that I saw when I was young, and again going back to kind of like it had this level of perversity that I had never seen in it.
Yes,
I'd never seen in a movie before, and me being like probably, I don't know, 10 years old, maybe even younger than that. And just having that be like, what's going on here, and that being my
yeah,
introduction to Lynch, and then later on going in watching Blue Velvet, and obviously going and visiting Eraserhead, and actually I really like his short films. A lot of those like those weird, bizarre short films that he's done.
yeah, they're fun.
Um, but he's so interesting. And he's always the guy that people bring up when you're talking
Yeah,
weird cinema. Him and Cronenberg are the two names you always get brought up. But there's a
absolutely.
reason why you bring those names up.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think one thing, I've just watched a lot of interviews by him and stuff, and kind of like one I've picked up some of his advice to when I'm creating. He talks a lot about letting yourself dream when you are creating a scene or writing a script. Letting yourself dream and like really like meditating on a scene so that you can get like these really like hidden nuggets out of a scene that you may not have gotten if you're just kind of quickly writing or quickly shooting. So I try to let myself like I'll get in the bathtub and put on white noise and get out of get everything else out of my brain and try to meditate on a scene. And that kind of stuff really has opened my mind to creating, to creating like new avenues of getting ideas. He talks about that like big fish at the bottom of the ocean. You have to get real down deep to find that fish. And I feel like I've gotten down there sometimes. Every once in a while, I actually get real deep into an idea and find this gem of an idea that I wouldn't have if I wouldn't have let myself meditate and think about a plot point or a character long enough. If that makes sense.
No, I feel that.
So,
All right, so let's kind of wind this down a little bit, Joe. I feel like you and I could probably just talk about movies for hours.
yeah,
So
for
we'll
sure.
definitely have to do this again. Uh, so what? I know you kind of laid out the plan for Sister Tempest, but why don't you give everyone kind of an idea what the next like year is going to be like for you, and what's kind of like the time frame for everything.
Yeah, so May 1st, we Sister Tempest will be on Eventive to watch, like premium, like virtual cinema sort of thing. So it's like the same price as a ticket to the movies kind of deal. Um, and that, if you go to sistertempest.blogspot.com, yes, we actually built it in Blogspot
Love it.
because I'm really bad with technology. But it's funny because the whole website, I don't know if you've seen it, it's very
I did.
GeoCities,
Yeah, no, I
which is
love it.
fun.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm like, oh,
that's
did you build
because
this to Dreamweaver? Like,
that's because I don't know how to build websites, so I just decided I'm going to make it look like shit.
that's all right.
Um,
I use Squarespace for mine, so
yeah. So we have all those links to watch it virtually on that website already, and that'll be so you can pre-order tickets right now. But March 1st, which is like in a few days, you'll be able to watch it, and that'll run from March 1st to May 31st,
nice.
and then in June, the Sister Tempest will be available through Dark Side Releasing's website, and you can buy it for Blu-ray, DVD, and we'll have it up on Amazon and all that
Yeah,
sort of stuff.
Darkside puts their stuff pretty much everywhere, so like it should be up on like
Yeah,
iTunes and all those
and
places.
they have great Blu-ray releases. So we're going to have like deleted scenes, and we're going to have interviews, and we're going to have commentary and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very excited because God Inside My Ear was just such a basic package that we went through Gravitas, and Gravitas doesn't give a shit about their movies. They're just like, yes, we're putting out another movie, you know. So I'm excited to have it in the hands of a distributor that cares about the film. They really love the film. They're excited about it. So I'm excited about that. And this year we're filming a new set of short films, like a short film in 4 chapters, essentially. So we're going to kind of release it chapter by chapter. So we're going to start shooting that pretty soon, within a few weeks or a month. So,
awesome.
And that's going to be called The Wheel of Heaven, and it's kind of like a short film that's all centered around this book that this person reads and gets into the story, and it all becomes very weird.
Amazing.
So
Sounds good to me, my man.
yeah.
All righty. Well, hey, Joe, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. You're going to have to come back again. Why don't we have you come back when the Blu-ray is going to drop? Be a good time to promote it. So, what's the best place for people to find out your information and where like your online presence?
Sure. You go to either Facebook. You go to Facebook and look up Joe Badon, Badon, or you can go to Instagram and look up Joe Badon Art, and you can follow me on either or friend me on either of those. If you go to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you can just search for Sister Tempest, and we're on all those things. Facebook is where I'm the most active because I'm 45, and I still don't understand social media very well. So yeah, you can go to any of those and just just Google my name, and it should pop up as well.
I just found you on Instagram and made sure to follow you.
Sweet.
So cool. All right. Hey, thanks for hanging, man. I appreciate it.